Come and dream with me.
Hello and welcome to this What Do You Want to Watch Spoilercast for The Witcher, Nightmare of the Wolf. I'm Ashley Hobley. Joining me today, Dylan Blight.
I'm a Witcher, Harry.
I'm Ashley. Also joining us, Ciaran Marchant.
Look, honestly, this animated movie just didn't have enough Gwent. Like, I needed more Gwent. Like,
It wasn't invented yet.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, that's what a fan theory decided. Gwent is not invented yet. This is like 1,000 years prior to Gwent.
Is okay. Please be aware we're freely discussing anything, everything about the plot themes and anything of the film, so if you haven't watched it, come back later. It's available on Netflix. So with that said, let's jump to a discussion of The Witcher, Nightmare of the Wolf, directed by Kwang Il Han, written by Beau DeMayo, based on The Witcher by Andrzej Sapkowski, starring Theo James, Lara, Pulver, Graham McTavish, and Mary McDonnell. Vesemir, a cocky young witcher, delights in slaying monsters for coin. When a dangerous new power rises on the continent, Vesemir learns that some witchering jobs are about more than just money. Ciaran, you're a big Witcher fan. What did you think of Nightmare of the Wolf?
This movie was so fucking great. Like, this movie was insane. Like, honestly, before this came out, I had done very little looking into what this movie was about. I hadn't watched any trailers.
I would go as far as to say you had no idea it was coming out until I said, "Hey, Ciaran, do you want to record a spoiler cast for The Witcher?"
I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when it was coming out. I didn't realize how close it was. I knew it was a thing though. But watching this and then kind of very quickly realizing that it's Vesemir as the lead character, and this is diving into Vesemir's character and his kind of.
So for people who don't know, or who just watched this and haven't played the game, Vesemir is the elder mentor and kind of semi-de facto leader of the witches in the time of Geralt of Rivia, who does in fact appear in this movie, and it's quite fucking obvious that he's appearing in this movie from the moment he comes on screen. Just because out of the kids that are shown, he looks far more detailed than the rest of them at his initial appearance. But no, this movie is great. It further builds up the world. For people who have only watched maybe the Netflix series, I think this does a fantastic job of like bringing characters in from the Netflix series, like Fandral is in this movie as kind of the elder elf once more, and kind of this is where in his earlier days when the Civil War's only just kind of occurred for them. I love this. I love not the ambiguity is the wrong word, but just the shades of grey that are in this movie that kind of is a commonality throughout The Witcher itself, in its books, in the TV show, in the game, is that, there's never always just an obvious good and bad. I think this movie kind of does at one point give you a very obvious bad person, but I like the fact that it shines a light to a greater audience that, towards the fall of their major kind of period, the witches were not doing the greatest of things and started creating monsters for themselves, and like the mutagenics that they were doing on their young ones was in itself abhorrent, and it's interesting that it's explored in this, and the first, I guess you would say now, the first battle of Kaer Morhen took place, and I think even though that battle has been featured in Witcher games already, I think to now see it take place in animation, to see it from this perspective, and then not only see it from kind of Geralt's perspective as a kid, but to see it as Vesemir's, and to see who Vesemir was. Like, by the time you meet him, he's a much older and well-traveled character that is this mentor figure and does have all of his shit worked out, but he's very confident in being a witcher and monster slaying. So to see him at this point, where yes, he's confident to the point of arrogance of being a witcher slayer and monster slayer even, and just kind of seeing his viewpoint of trying to make things better, and I think this, not only does this kind of tackle the common Witcher threads, but it tackles once again the idea of the Witchers aging so slowly and what that does to the world around them, and how the people that they knew when I was a kid evolved throughout it and have aged in the same timeline that they barely seem to have aged at all. We continue to the love affair of the Witcher, or a Witcher, and bathtubs and getting out of the bathtub. that is vastly continued throughout this. Honestly, this movie gave me the desire that I really fucking hope that they do a full TV series about the early years of Geralt and Vesemir and kind of Geralt's training as a child and everything. I think that'd be fucking great, and they've set it up really well in this. There's so much to love about this movie. There is, I had a friend who was watching this just after I watched it, and they sent me a Snapchat of just like the initial kind of male character that is the carriage driver looking at his kids, and all the Snapchat said was, "Oh, this person's about to die." And it was just, for me, it was just like moments before complete and utter disaster, because the moment that introduction scene happens and it introduces you to the level of gore that's going to be appearing in this animation is something that's going to take you back. And I think not only for The Witcher, but for Netflix as a whole, for me, this is now coming off the heels of the Dota 2 series, Dragon's Blood. Now coming onto this is fucking amazing. Like, for me, this is almost like kind of, in terms of like an animated feature, is in kind of the same leagues as Avatar: The Last Airbender in very much ways for me. I'm very excited to see what more they do with this and how they further use this kind of medium to integrate into their larger Witcher series that they're doing henceforth.
Sure. Dylan?
I'll get my one negative out of the way quickly, because otherwise I mostly have positive stuff to say, which is that it's an hour 20, and there's a part in this where it's like sort of rushes through a lot of stuff where characters were all sort of together in one place, and then they split up, and then you sort of rush through like they're talking to like the girl who's now older, she's like talking to the king or whatever, and it's like this whole like 5 to 10 minute sequence where stuff is sort of like rush, and like that's my only big negative about this is I really enjoyed the animation, I really enjoyed the voice acting and the general story being told, but I also feel like I would have nearly preferred this to have been an actual mini-series, like maybe tell this story across X to 6 episodes. I don't know. I don't know, varying length, whatever works, but I just feel like this needed to be like either a 2.5 hour animated movie or at least a mini-series or something, because the hour 20 didn't quite do justice to a lot of the characters or give them time. Like, there's a few characters who don't get enough time to be explored or enough backstory or any of these sorts of things and whatever else. I think maybe some of this is to do with, so this is produced by Lauren Schmidt, who is the showrunner of The Witcher on Netflix. So I believe everything's supposed to be connected. Like, this is all the Netflix Witcher universe. Like the voice actor who plays the elf. What's his name again?
Philantril.
Yeah, so it's the same actor voicing him here as it is that plays him in the live action Witcher series. So like, I'm pretty sure everything is supposed to be connected, and this movie works as a sort of it'll help, I guess, elevate people. Like, it's not necessary to watch prior to The Witcher season 2, but I think it's positioned to help elevate coming into season 2, where you're going to meet Vesemir live action, where you're going to meet where we're going to get to Kar Morin for the first time in the live action series, where you're going to see some of those other younger kids who are there with Geralt at the end, who are the older witches who he'll be interacting with in that series. Like, this is sort of the setup, and you're going to get to see where and how witches have come from where they are to the time where Geralt is, and like, that's what this sort of serves as. So it's not necessary, but it works. I think the way that they show Vesemir's story is, like, his general arc is very good. He goes from a kid who like hates life and whatever else, and he escapes because he wants riches or whatever else, and then by the end of it, you get that more serious turning point, because that's what, if you've read any of the books or you've played the games, Vesemir is super serious. Like, he's sort of, well, not super serious, but he's definitely serious. He's
more of a steadfast mentor by that point. Like, he's very much a old grizzled witcher that is cracking jokes at the expense of Geralt, but is also the first person that Geralt would go to for advice or to kind of crack down on.
He has that fatherly figure, like, down between all that sort of stuff. So to see how he gets there and what he goes through, and like how he has his sort of partying years or whatever through to his 70s, and then he, to see what he goes through and what events cause him to become that character that we're about to meet in the second season of the Netflix series, or the character that most people would know from either the games or books or whatever. Like, I think they do a good job at telling that story. There's some other interesting little tidbits that I thought are thrown around in this. Like, they do cover the whole thing of why there aren't many witches left by the time you get to Geralt, and this does the whole explanation of, well, they can't create any more witches because the person who was doing it's dead, the facilities are gone, it's dead. Now, of course, there is sort of a red herring, like, not a plot hole yet, because we yet to get there, which is that, of course, like, there is going to be at least one more Witcher, like,
But
or a
didn't they
potential
save the
trainee.
guys who knew how to do the...
No, because it doesn't actually explicitly show this in it. It's very much suggested Vesemir slaughtered everybody in that room. Like, during his...
Yeah, but all those mage dudes left the room, right?
No, there's in the shot where he wakes up from his visions.
Yeah, you see that mage dude.
You see the mage with the white head is on the floor.
Yeah, and he killed
And
him.
it's like
Or it's
it's
implied he killed
Vesemir's
him.
it's Vesemir's sword that's been shoved through the woman's body and everything.
Yeah.
And he's holding it at the time he wakes up. Like,
Yeah. And
it is
the-
100% implied. Because the thing that I guess if you know Vesemir, if you know of his story coming up, the moment he got his arm chopped off in the fight, I was like, oh, this is a dream sequence. And like, this is some Inception shit going on now. That this is like them further fucking with him by pretending like he's come out of the dream sequence. Because Vesemir has a hand in, and I even, you know what, while watching it, I even fucking double checked myself online because I was like, I fucking swear Vesemir still has a hand. And I quickly
he just
googled
doesn't
while
have the
I
other.
sat there when I was watching.
he just gets a fucked up face or whatever across his eye.
Yeah, he's just got a thing across his eye. But yeah, no, it is heavily implied that Vesemir is the one that killed everybody in that room.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And the movie does hammer home several times that you need, like, this is the dude who's in charge of the Witcher, like, creation of witches. He's the on worksite mage for Warren.
Yeah.
You know, like, he's the one doing all the stuff. So
He's
without him,
Witcher R&D.
yeah, 100%. So
He's the Q for the witches.
the other thing that this does that I think is like sort of a plus and a negative is it does some world building with the elf and like and they tease the creation of the first Witcher and how they're involved, and you know the original playing around with morphing of genes and all this sort of stuff. Some of that's like interesting, but it's all backdoor pilot because we already know and when they announced this, they also announced that they're doing a spin-off miniseries for Netflix as well called the
Blood
Witcher
Origins.
Blood Origins, which is it's live action, I believe.
Yes.
I'm 99% sure. Yeah. Live action series where that will be about the creation of like the first Witcher, basically. Like way back in the day with the elves and everything and what they're all going through. So a lot of that stuff in this feels like sort of backdoor pilot-y to a degree of teasing all that sort of stuff. So even here or there or whatever. But overall, I really, really enjoy it. There's lots of nuggets here for like if you like the games, books or whatever, but it's also just building out the bigger Netflix version of the Witcher universe and whatever else. And I think coming off the Witcher first season, where that was told in a very like some sort of unorthodox storytelling way, there was something nice about just being able to watch a very traditional like storytelling way to explain the origin of a Witcher character. You know, because it just gives you the general back forth. There's nothing crazy going on here and whatever else. Super violent, rated R, awesome. Loved it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I think obviously someone not as heavily invested in the Witcher universe. I've watched the Netflix series. I've played 2-3 hours of the game, so
You've
barely
played
scratching
White
the
Orchard.
surface.
You've played the starting zone. You fucking love it.
One day, once that PS5 patch comes in, you know, it's coming after they get Cyberpunk done. Yeah, just an interesting story. I like Ciaran barely knew anything about this, so I didn't realize Vesemir was. It was a prequel following Geralt's mentor. I just thought it was just some random new Witcher that were going to follow. No, it's all connected. So, but yeah, I enjoyed his story. You know, I thought obviously interesting flashing back to his time as a kid starting out as a Witcher, and I assume that's going to be in contrast to what Ciri's going to go through in the series.
Series is a little bit different though, just because of everything around her.
Yeah, but yeah,
She's
obviously it's like, hey, this is how we used to do it. It's like we can't do it that way anymore. Let's leave a bunch of kids in this like monster-filled swamp and see what happens.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something interesting about this, showing you how they did create witches and how brutal and all that it was, and that's even to a degree. Geralt was like the last group to go through that. Like him and his friends, they are the last witches.
Geralt
they are the last.
He's
differently modified.
Geralt's different. He had some experimental ones done on him, much further than Lambert and the other kids did.
Yeah, but they're like the last of their kind, basically, and the last to go through that. So I don't think it's like a spoiler to say that. And presuming the Netflix series does what they do in the books or games or whatever, by the time you get to Ciri, not only is it different because of her relationship to Geralt and who she is, but also she's the first person to arrive there to get any sort of training for hundreds of years. Like it's a really sort of like, what are we doing? And that's why she forms this sort of family relationship with the witches compared to what you're shown in this, where everyone's sort of thrown to the wolves, the best survive sort of I think situation.
The best thing about this as well is this leads greater context to eventually, you would think, in the series where Geralt and Vesemir have the discussion about Ciri becoming a Witcher, and kind of giving you more understanding if Vesemir at first is very against it, and exactly why he's like that. You know, it's more of an idea of what happened to the witches and why they got to the point they're at.
Also, shout out to the point in this movie where they have to make sure to chuck out the whole mention the law of surprise, just as to be like, hey, remember that was a thing in the season 1?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I also want to say animation across the board, simply fantastic. Studio Mia obviously has a very impressive resume, even though they're like, let's say, less than 10 years old at this point. But first projects, 2012, obviously Legend of Korra, something I care about. Voltron, which was a big thing on Netflix. Then, of course, they did the Dodo Dragon's Blood recently, as on top of a bunch of other stuff, but truly a name to follow in animation and that kind of stuff. So they're really cool. And yeah, just I mean, Tetra, she was a pretty solid villain. Like she swung kind of, you weren't sure whether she was the bad guy or not, that kind of stuff. So yeah,
which she went super duper bad.
She went super duper bad. Like full on using magic in a way that I don't think they would have been able to pull off in live action.
No, that part of her like causing the mountain to explode or whatever and all that stuff. Well, that whole sequence with her and Vesemir fighting was really fucking awesome. Like all the spells and stuff they were both casting. So
yeah,
beautifully animated. Yeah, cool. So anything else you want to discuss about the Nightmare of the Wolf?
I just hope they keep doing stuff like this. Like I love this idea. Do some animated things, do some live action things, do the main series, do some mini series, do some animated movies, do some anime series. Like the Witcher universe is big enough and has enough characters that it's like, yeah, just fucking go for it.
and I like the idea that they are treating their audience members like they're not stupid. Like, not Kaer Morhen, the fucking, I can't even remember the name now, but the name of where the wizards and mages get taught was like name dropped throughout this episode. But it wasn't name dropped in a way that was like, we have to re-explain what this was. It's just kind of expected that you know what it is.
So it was the big city, which I can't remember now off the top of my head either. The main big city where they get caught stealing, and he's like, if you were in blah, 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 your hands would be cut off and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, oh, that's the big city from The Witcher 3.
That's Novigrad, right?
Yeah, Novigrad or whatever. Yeah,
Novigrad, yeah. But yeah, I think the more they do this and the more they actually show care and detail to The Witcher and The Witcher series as a whole, the better it is. Like, it's gonna, I'm so excited for everything coming forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Not far away from Witcher's end of this year.
I think it's either December or January, isn't it? I can't remember what
that's
pretty sure
it's the same
December.
time as it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, so Boxing Day maybe.
Another minor point is, do you think this movie would have been better as a TV series? And do you think this then, like, my hope is that this evolves into a Vesemir and Geralt TV show of some form? Do you think that's likely, or do you think they're going to stick to the movie style of presentation?
I think they'd stick with the movie style. You know, they've done one, why not stick to it? Like, they don't all need to be 120 minutes. They can be shorter. They can be longer. They can be more frequent. You know, say mini movies series type. I don't know. What do you think, Dylan?
I think if they do a Vesemir Geralt animated thing as a sort of sequel to this or whatever you want to call it, I just think there needs to be a bigger. Like, you can do a random, like, here's a villain of the week type movie, but I'm like, I guess you got to find something that's just more important to that film or important to that story, or you got to find, like, what is it about that film that sort of says something about the person Geralt becomes or something, you know, like, you got to hone in on why that you're making that film aside from just, like, here's them hunting the monster or whatever, you know. So that's the only thing I'd say you need.
Cool. All right. Let us know what you thought of The Witcher, Nightmare of the Wolf, or what you think thoughts on the Witcher franchise going forward on Netflix are by going to explosion.com/Twitter or jump into our Discord at explosion.com/Discord. Leave what do you want to watch a review on Podchaser, on Apple Podcasts. Let people know about the show any which way you can. And if you like this episode and thought it was worth $1, head on over to our Ko-fi page at explosionnetwork.com/support and buy us a coffee. Thank you very much for listening. Until next time, keep watching stuff, I guess.
You missed out on saying the pun any which way.
Any which... Sorry, Simon.
Yeah.